Story 1 Veteran. I guarantee you many are not happy. The National Guard consists of locals. They do not want to be called away from their 9 to 5 jobs for this because they are expected to act harshly toward their own neighbors. Also, there were many paperwork and pay issues when the Guard was sent to Los Angeles. It would not surprise me if we experience a repeat of that. Any commander worth their salt will not send their people in again for the president if there are pay problems. I will tell you who you really need to start worrying about. There is significant policy regarding exactly what the military can and cannot do on United States soil against U.S. citizens. And yes, we might start to see those lines crossed, but I think it will still be some time away. I am not sure there is enough blind devotion at the middle management level, and you will probably see at least a few proud officers who remember their oath is to the Constitution and not to one individual. The vast majority of officers have at least a bachelor's degree, many earned at public universities, and many still retain critical thinking skills and are concerned about the state of things. I have seen rumors that Pritzker placed the Illinois National Guard on standby due to the number of Texas House representatives who are holding up quorum. These conversations at the Guard level are happening, and they are not as blindly devoted to former President Trump as you might fear. The point is, it will be a while before we risk seeing actual mass martial law orchestrated through the military. You know who does not have those restrictions? Federal agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and most importantly, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which has received a 400% budget increase. If we start to see real militarized violence against citizens, it will be federal agencies leading the charge. Story 2. If, hypothetically, a service member had a problem with the president, there would be rules regarding expressing that view. Whether directly outlined in the Uniform Code of Military Justice or more loosely tied to codes of conduct, expressing contempt toward anyone in your chain of command is forbidden. Partisan political activity is prohibited. Speaking a political opinion publicly while in uniform is not allowed. Although on paper it seems that if you clearly express that your words are your own and do not represent the position of the armed forces, you can speak freely, the truth is that any post that might raise an eyebrow is generally frowned upon. Political action and opinions are vitally important for our country's health, but those who enlist in the military generally set aside many personal desires and feelings to fulfill the role required by their current orders, at least while under contract. I served from 2016 to 2020, and I thought the former president was a traitor and undesirable. I shared that view with family and friends but never posted it publicly at the time. Just saying, original poster, you will probably not get many genuine responses, mainly veterans and those pretending to be veterans. Story 3, active duty here. If I were ordered to use force against my fellow citizens, I would refuse. Sometimes the legal action is still immoral and unconstitutional, as interpreted by any sane person, and a line must be drawn. I have not been placed in that position. My job probably will not take me down that road, and I hope it never does. For my brothers and sisters in the National Guard, I hope you know where that line is. I feel it may be closer than you and your superiors realize. Story 4. I wonder if they are planning to announce something related to Jeffrey Epstein that they know will upset people. This could be a preemptive measure to prevent potential rioting in Washington, such as pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell in exchange for her silence. Story 5, veteran here, and I would refuse those orders. Leavenworth is not a dream, but I could not break my oath. Story 6. Before the false flag operation takes place and martial law is declared, the Heritage Foundation can take complete control of the White House. Story 7. You will not find many active duty military members giving their opinions, especially if they go against the official narrative. It is not allowed, I believe. Story 8. Donald Trump will always come up with an excuse for being an authoritarian, just like he will in 3 years when he tells the country that he cannot leave office because of some imaginary invasion that exists only in his head. Story 9. Recently retired after 22 years as an Army National Guard member and reservist. I urge all my still serving comrades to remember their oaths of office. Enlisted Oath of Enlistment, Title 10, United States Code, Section 502. I, full name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Officer Oath of Office, Title 5, United States Code, Section 3331. I, full name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. The final phrase, so help me God, may be omitted for those who choose to affirm rather than swear. The most important points are that you support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you will obey lawful orders under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The loyalty you are swearing or affirming this oath under is to the Constitution, not to any person. Story 10. This is a plan by extremists to get the public to rise up. Then they declare martial law, halting any more elections and keeping themselves in power. Additionally, there are accusations against Donald Trump. Story 11. I am a former National Guard member, and I cannot believe they are using them to violate people's civil liberties. It is extremely upsetting and makes me ashamed. Story 12. As a combat veteran and a National Guard veteran, it is an unlawful order for commanding officers to order troops to attack civilians in any capacity outside of a verified armed rebellion. Donald Trump and any officer who follows his orders should be tried and executed as traitors to the Republic. Story 13. So he can call the National Guard in a state of emergency. He just did not want to when the Capitol was under attack by his supporters. Story 14. Marine veteran here, 2006 to 2010. We were taught not to follow an order we could not live with later. I understand what the Posse Comitatus Act is. That said, Donald Trump is a traitor and worse. Story 15. I have been out of the National Guard since 2019. This is the only time since then that I have wished so strongly to be back just so I could disobey some unlawful orders. What is happening? Story 16. In any of these discussions, someone will say that things are a distraction from Jeffrey Epstein. But even if Donald Trump's name is all over the Epstein files, close to 50% of his supporters say they would support him anyway. And is he not immune from any kind of convictions anyway? Story 17. Retired National Guard member here. You need to understand that there are not a couple 100,000 military members waiting to disobey an illegal order. When the order comes, the military will shoot you dead in the street. There has historically been one way out of where we are now. If I say it, I will get a ban. Story 18. If you do not refuse to carry out illegal orders, you have violated your oath and are not fit to be a United States soldier. Story 19. I think people continue to tie everything back to the Epstein files so it does not lose any of the spotlight, and because it is a constant reminder to Donald Trump and his administration that everyone knows he is in the files. Story 20. Just want to remind everyone that Donald Trump did this during his first term as well, during the Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020 following the killing of George Floyd. He thrives on this behavior. Americans must make their voices heard when this happens. Resistance has real effects. Story 21. Okay, since I haven't seen any actual National Guard members make a comment, I'll take the bullet and make one myself. I've been in the National Guard almost 6 years, and I'm coming up on my expiration term of service soon, so I'll be out soon thankfully. Personally, I'm against this 100%. I cannot think of a time while I've been in where the National Guard has been used like this. Maybe in 2020 during the election, but it wasn't nearly this bad. It worries me about my state. In my experience, most National Guard members I meet are right-leaning compared to me and a few left-leaning friends. Those on the right will find excuses to justify it. A lot of National Guard experience is just training, and many are itching to actually do something meaningful. Some justified the California activation because they only saw the violence and none of the actual peaceful protest. Something that a lot of people have to realize is that most National Guard members are just average people. Not all of them live and breathe the military. The one hope I have is that National Guard members see how they are perceived in moments like this. Most never really see how the public reacts to their activations or mobilizations, but with situations like this, they are going to see pressure for the first time. I always see people make comments about, why don't they just refuse to go? We are taught pretty early on that we really don't have a choice when it comes to being activated. To most people, it's just a part-time job. They don't understand the amount of responsibility they hold or how they are really viewed. To a few, it's just an excuse to get paid or get away from their day job. I expect that they aren't going to have much to do. There's not much the average National Guard member can do. I just hope there are people who exercise their right to protest and show my fellow National Guard members what this all really means. Don't be violent towards them. Don't call them fascists. Just tell them how they are perceived by the people. Of course, there are people who will support this activation, but do not let them be the loudest. That's all I really have to say on the matter. I hope I don't expose myself personally. I just wanted to put something out there. I support the Constitution and the people, not who sits in the Oval Office. Story 22. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. John F. Kennedy. Story 23. It is all a dog and pony show. Guardsmen are being taken from their families and regular jobs for meaningless politics. It is not popular. Story 24. Former National Guard member. And I can tell you we were always worried about any deployment because the long-term personnel were largely incompetent. This goes back a long way. Maybe it is better now. Story 25. Timeline. Epstein files versus Trump administration actions. February to April 2025. Promised transparency and grandstanding. February 21st. Attorney General Pam Bondi hints in a Fox News interview that an Epstein client list is currently under review. February 27th. Pro-Trump figures receive Phase 1 declassified binders labeled Epstein files, though most contents were already public. March to April. Bondi and Trump repeatedly promised to release the full files. Bondi mentions a truckload of evidence, and Trump states 100% of the documents will be delivered. May to June 2025 change in tone. May, exact date unknown. Bondi informs Trump that his name appears in the Epstein files. The administration claims many allegations were not credible. May 18th. FBI officials Kash Patel and Dan Bongino declare Epstein died by suicide, shifting the response strategy. May 29th to June 6th. Messaging shifts toward downplaying the files. Bongino calls them nothing, and Patel argues release is unnecessary to avoid re-victimizing. July 2025. Continued denial. July 7th. The Department of Justice issues a memo stating no client list exists, Epstein killed himself, and no further documents will be released. July 15th. Trump denies being informed of his name in the files despite earlier confirmation. July 23rd. The Trump administration's request to unseal Maxwell's grand jury transcripts is rejected by a judge who calls it based on a demonstrably false premise. August 2025. Diversion. National Guard deployment and blame. Mid-August. Trump federalizes District of Columbia Police and deploys 800 National Guard troops, citing safety and homelessness concerns. Critics view this as a distraction. Maryland Governor Wes Moore calls it a political ploy, stating he is using honorable men and women as pawns to distract from policies. Reverend Al Sharpton similarly characterizes it as an attempt to distract Trump's frustrated base from his handling of the Epstein files. Interpretation. Promises to release the files early in 2025 signal transparency, which Trump initially embraced. After learning his name was in the files, messaging shifted sharply to downplaying and deflation. The July Department of Justice memo marked an end to transparency regarding Epstein. By mid-August, the administration escalated unrelated but attention-grabbing actions such as National Guard deployment and policing in Washington, D.C., widely seen as a strategy to divert attention from Epstein. Bottom line. Based on the timeline and reporting, there is a strong case that Trump's shift in rhetoric, combined with aggressive distractions like National Guard deployment, were calculated moves to deflect public attention from the Epstein controversy once it became personally sensitive. Story 26. He is desperate to distract from the Epstein files. Keep talking about them and keep reposting that long comment with all of the links to released or leaked files. Edit. I am National Guard. Keep up the Epstein pressure. I did not want a five-time draft-dodging, pedophile, rapist, convicted felon, fraud as my boss to begin with. Do what you can to stop him from trying to outshine Adolf Hitler. Story 27. You will not find many active military or National Guard postings on Reddit. Some veterans participate, but mostly you will encounter individuals expressing strong personal opinions. There are strict rules about presenting yourself as a member of the armed services and publicly giving political opinions. To be clear, I am not active in any branch of the United States Armed Forces. If the Los Angeles deployment is any indication, this is mostly a public relations stunt. Some convoys will move through, some troops will be deployed where cameras are present, but mostly a few thousand personnel will live in tents at Fort McNair or another Washington, D.C. area military base until the media attention subsides and they can return home. To emphasize the point, Washington, D.C. ranks only 19th in the nation by homicide rate. However, the former president is not deploying the National Guard to cities like St. Louis, Memphis, Cleveland, or Baton Rouge, or other states with high violent crime rates. Story 28. They have to follow all lawful orders. One of the first things this administration did was remove independent judge advocates tasked with determining the legality of orders. If the service members are told it is lawful, what do you expect? They have to comply. The corruption lies in the people above their heads telling them what is lawful. It is above their pay grade. Edit to add, however, Washington, D.C. today was nothing like the news led you to believe. It was just another normal Monday. It is a complete Epstein distraction. Our streets are not militarized. Footage I have seen shared on social media is of troops assembling for the birthday parade and not from today. America is still standing. For now. Story 29. Veterinarian here. All performance. Probably stand there like idiots. Get paid. Wonder about the Epstein files. Story 30. Not a nasty girl, but just wondering where those documents are that have Donald Trump's name. Donald Trump has been accused of sex with minors and trafficking girls. Full stop. Story 31. I am a veteran, and there is a part of me that wishes I were still active just so I could take a stand and not follow the orders. Story 32. I dislike how random people respond to questions specifically asked of National Guard members. If you are not in the National Guard, please remain silent so we can get answers. Story 33. They are using this as an excuse to further fortify Washington, District of Columbia, beyond what we are aware of. I am guessing they anticipate major civil unrest and are trying to get ahead of it as much as possible at this point. Story 34. In all seriousness, what would happen to an individual if they refused an unethical order? Do they get sent to the Human Resources Department of the National Guard? Is there an agency that monitors these types of orders? Or does the person who stands up for their morals just get dishonorably discharged along with losing their benefits, Veterans Affairs loan, and other military-related entitlements? I am genuinely curious about what happens to someone who refuses. Story 35. To distract the country from his name being on Jeffrey Epstein's client list, he is deploying the National Guard as he did in Los Angeles. I wonder how long they will sit unpaid without supplies like food and beds. It is all for show and distraction. People continue to demand the release of the Epstein files. Story 36. I work with a man who is out for 3 weeks for training. He left last Wednesday and was fairly certain he was going to assist immigration and customs enforcement in some way. When someone joked about wanting to swap places with him to get out of work, he said, "You wouldn't want to go if you knew what is happening." He did not seem proud or excited but more like obligated. He is old enough to retire but still went. Story 37. I was active duty for 8 years and was undecided about staying in. November 2016 sealed the deal for me. I could never serve while he is commander-in-chief. Shame on all of you. Story 38. Veteran here. They are either on board, dragging ass, absolutely refusing, or too ignorant to know better. Refusing an order is not something you do on a whim because even for the best reasons, the consequences can be severe. Look up my lie to see how bad it can get. Story 39. The wrong domestic enemy is being pursued. The wrong Amazon is burning. The wrong ice is melting. The wrong pedophile files are being released. Story 40. What is shocking is that when Donald Trump supporters were attacking the Capitol, he could not take action to mobilize the National Guard. Now he claims to have all the power to perform this stunt. He is worthless. Story 41. In an autocrat's playbook, create division to provoke civil unrest and justify the need for an increased police force to establish a police state that enforces rigged election results. Alternatively, he may have simply disliked the view while riding to the golf course. Perhaps both. Story 42. It is a dumb show and a waste of money. It is technically legal for the moment, so as a service member I would go along. But it is horrible for morale in general. That said, from what I remember, the District of Columbia Guard is mostly military police, so they may be all enthusiastic about getting to be police officers. And police officers can be unpleasant, military or not. I am a 20-year Guard veteran, plus 5 years in the reserves. Story 43. This feels like an attempt to militarize the area immediately around himself for protection instead of combating actual crime. Story 44. 427 to 29 days each month. We are normal citizens. Few of us want to cause trouble for the public. We prefer to train for disaster response or our federal mission. At best, this is a waste of taxpayer money. At worst, it could result in another Kent State incident. Story 45. Civilian here. The National Guard has had no qualms occupying Los Angeles, doing former President Donald Trump's bidding in Washington, D.C. during the Black Lives Matter protests, and even gunning down unarmed kids at Kent State. Do not count on their compassion. Most of them are eager supporters of Donald Trump. Story 46. It is genuinely annoying how clearly nobody commenting is actually part of the National Guard. If you are not part of the demographic in question, please do not answer the question. Comments like these make threads useless. Story 47. Definitive proof that the Republican Party is not truly about states' rights. They used the idea of states' rights to try to legitimize white racist processes. Now, in political dominance, they are forcing their views on all levels of government. Story 48. Veteran and retiree here. I would absolutely not obey an order that is unlawful. Firing upon Americans or immigrants is absolutely unlawful. Do not obey those orders. The Uniform Code of Military Justice will protect you. Story 49. District of Columbia Guardsmen here. I was encamped to the Capitol on January 6th. This encampment will likely be similar. Show of force only. It will be so disorganized with no clear direction from the 8 other agencies making rules that it will all be for nothing. Most of the people going downtown are citizen soldiers, which means they do not get the training day in and day out that the regular police forces get. We are not all trained for policing duties either. Some are administrative, some run supply chains, some fix vehicles and aircraft. Riot training is done as needed. Welfare training is done as needed. As everyone else has said, we cannot obey unlawful orders, but to do that with more confidence, it needs to come from the commanding officers leading their soldiers. They signed the same oath as the enlisted did. Story 50. National Guard veteran here. Old Yam Tits is violating the Posse Comitatus Act, trying to distract from the fact that he is a pedophile in the Epstein files. Some former unit buddies think it is unacceptable but recognize that he has 30 days of legal authority, which comes with restrictions. If I were still in, I would likely refuse the order as unlawful according to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Story 51. I think, removed by OPSEC. Come on, man. What are you expecting soldiers to say? It is a huge risk for them to comment here with no real benefit to them or the country by speaking up in this venue. Story 52. It is unwise. We should only be activated for emergencies. We have lives and jobs as well. Worse, what are we going to do? Sit there and look menacing? We are not trained police officers and we do not mobilize for this type of situation. However, I am not a military police officer. Maybe they have more relevant experience and training. Story 53. We will spend a fortune having soldiers in difficult situations for no reason, and police officers wandering around getting to know people better because there is no crime. He will still be a child abuser whose population still wants the Epstein files. Story 54. It is complete and utter nonsense. It is against the law for National Guard members to act as law enforcement. Once again, the Guard members are taken away from their families for no valid reason, just so the aspiring dictator can appear tough and have his photo opportunity. Story 55. If they told you, decorum of our ranks would have deteriorated to such a degree that it would not matter what exactly they said. Saying anything in that context would be insubordination. The fact that no one will come out and say anything tells you everything you need to know. The orders will be followed, whatever they may be. Story 56. National Guard soldiers see each other one weekend a month, and this was just announced. They have no idea what each other think. Story 57. Billy Costigan. So do all those police officers come in here and cry? Madeline. Sometimes they do if they had trouble at home or if they had to use their weapons. Billy Costigan. Use their weapons? They signed up to use their weapons, most of them, but they watch enough television to know they have to weep. There is no one more deceitful than a police officer, except for a police officer on television. The military branches are no different. These types of positions draw a certain type of authoritarian person. Story 58. A reminder to sign up for the general strike. Story 59. The key factor here is cell phone cameras. Masked individuals rounding up undocumented immigrants might be excusable if you are prejudiced. Masked individuals versus regular Americans? The independents will revolt. Elections are not decided in Washington, D.C. They are decided by secretaries of state in each state, with election officials in each county tabulating votes. The economy collapsing will not help. If former President Trump wants to trigger a civil war, he probably should not aggressively criticize the military leaders whose support he needs. Story 60. Refusal of an unlawful order is always followed by violence from the unlawful. Always. Where are the protests and petitions to remove him? Why is everyone just watching? He has done enough and had his fun. Remove him. If this is not unconstitutional, what is? What is unconstitutional if not him? Story 61. My thought as a veterinarian is, time to see who has the intestinal fortitude to do what is right and follow their oath. My thoughts as a civilian are, this is about to get much worse, and I doubt anyone is going to stop them. Many people I know are very uneasy about this. We know where this is going from previous examples throughout history and their own playbook. Story 62. Are there any National Guard members answering this post, which is who the original poster requested respond? Or is this just anonymous Democratic Party members answering? I get enough of that on social media. I too would like to hear from actual Guard members and their thoughts. The original poster's post was not an invitation for everyone to chime in. Story 63. I served in the National Guard in the 1980s after a tour of active duty. I was eager in those days, but it was more about confronting the Soviets in the Fulda Gap rather than acting as secret police for a mentally challenged leader. I could not have imagined this kind of situation. Story 64. Not a member, but I know two personally. One does not like his time in the service and does not talk about his tours. The other hates minorities despite being one and has posted online that he fully supports anything Donald Trump does. Story 65. I never joined. No one here was hurting me or my family. I refuse to go there to be around people who are quick to trigger conflict. Now we are turning against our countrymen? Absolutely not. You will have to put me in a cage, kill me, or both. Story 66. My governor has already refused to activate my unit for the president before, and that sentiment seems to be shared by the rest of the top leadership. I know that if the president wanted us to be activated for something like Washington, D.C., we would probably just sit around and not help with anything. However, if he wanted us for immigration and customs enforcement assistance, I know I and many of our team would say no. Story 67. If these cities are as bad as they say, then I hope these guardsmen are receiving tax-free hazard pay. Only fair, right? And orders for basic allowance for housing of more than 30 days. Story 68. All National Guard members everywhere should be protesting this autocratic administration for forcing troops into harm's way repeatedly without justification. The same applies to other mistreated military units. This president is not on your side. Story 69. There are a lot of veterans here saying that they would refuse those orders. Everyone is lying. Every active duty military member knows I am right. Nobody is refusing any of these orders. Everyone is terrified. Stop lying, stop pretending. You would not refuse. You might hate it, but you would not refuse. You are all wrong. This is based on conversations with my son's unit over the last decade. Nobody is refusing the president. Story 70. Are most of the National Guard employed in civilian jobs? If so, will that have any effect on companies' operations? Story 71. As of August 11, 2025, President Donald Trump announced a federal takeover of Washington, District of Columbia's police department, and deployed 800 National Guard troops to the city, citing rising crime and the need to protect federal interests. This move has sparked significant controversy and opposition from local officials and civil rights leaders, while specific reactions from National Guard members are not publicly documented. The general sentiment among military personnel in similar past situations has been one of concern. For instance, during previous deployments for domestic operations, some National Guard members expressed unease about being used in politically charged situations. One senior military officer was quoted saying, "I don't want to be seen as a Gestapo," reflecting apprehension about the optics and implications of such deployments. Given the unprecedented nature of the current deployment and the legal and political debates surrounding it, it is reasonable to infer that National Guard members may have mixed feelings about their involvement. The deployment raises questions about the appropriate use of military forces in domestic affairs and the potential impact on civil-military relations. Story 72. If it is anything like Los Angeles, they will be deployed and then sit around eating sandwiches or driving around in trucks doing nothing. Story 73. Veteran here. I hope that my younger self would refuse orders. I say hope because I was a much different person then. When I entered the military, I was from a Republican family and voted Republican. During my service, especially after President Barack Obama won, I noticed so much hate, racism, and vitriol, and I couldn't understand it. I had never seen it before. I wasn't raised to be a bigot, just raised to believe that the government should be a tool to help people and do so in a fiscally responsible way. I voted for President Barack Obama in the 2012 election. It was the first time voting for a Democratic president since I started voting in 2004. I am now an independent, although lately my views have leaned more to the left. Back then, I didn't have a problem with anyone's race, gender, religion, or other identities, but I noticed that my Republican peers did, and that sickened me. I heard the N-word from my fellow soldiers' mouths, and it sickened me. Knowing everything I know now, I would say that I would turn my weapon against the oppressor. I do not have faith that the majority of soldiers would refuse to follow orders. Though, it worries me every day. I have to force myself to take breaks from social media because it hurts. I worry about what is to come. I am scared. Story 74. They are not allowed to think about it. They are required to follow orders or else go absent without leave, which can result in prison time. Conscientious objection is a process, and even then it is an other than honorable discharge. It is not something they can decide on the spot. Story 75. I am not very hopeful about who is enlisted. They may not see Donald Trump as a dictator or a moronic fascist. Story 76. I can imagine the mixed feelings about this. Some probably see it as unnecessary, while others might feel it is necessary for security. Either way, it is definitely a tense situation. Story 77. Could also ask here or go there and see what they are saying. Story 78. They do not want to get sent to the cornfield, so they will all say, "It is good that Trump deployed the National Guard." Story 79. I have heard that the atmosphere is rather ambiguous. Some people are uncomfortable with being used in a political context, while others view it as just another mission. It is definitely not a universal viewpoint. Story 80. This is a precursor to rounding up the homeless everywhere and sending them to concentration camps. Once the public does not care about the homeless, they will move on to anyone they want and begin the process of liquidating people. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.